I think all actors wake up one morning and say, this is a very strange way of earning a living, and perhaps not very noble and perhaps not very important. But I disagree with that. I think that, as somebody said in the 18th century, we're happy children who, if we don't do any appreciable good, we do no appreciable harm. And in a world where people are doing a lot of appreciable harm, it is something to be harmless.
Peter, you've been masquerading as an Australian for a long time. Whereabouts in Australia were you born?
I was born in Cromwell Road, South Kensington.
That's what I thought.
You know, I haven't masqueraded as an Australian, but the Australians claim me as an Australian, and I was actually born in England. And I haven't bothered to refute it. I don't see why one shouldn't be claimed by Australia if they want it.
No, indeed not. But before you went to Australia, you were going to be a Buddhist priest, is this right?
Yes, I was with my grandmother in France, in Vaucresson near Paris, and she was a theosophist and embraced the Buddhist faith. We went to Madras in India for a theosophical congress, and where incidentally I met Gandhi when I was a very small child. And she gave me to a Buddhist monk, I suppose it's a sort of an acolyte, and I was carted off to Madras, and I lived in a room with this chap for about 10 days, I think. And I had my hair shaved off and the saffron robe. I didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't know what I was talking about. And then eventually the British Raj got to hear of it, and police, I can vaguely remember policemen and army officers coming to get me and giving me back to my grandmother. And shortly after that I left for Australia. I was about 10 or 11 at the time.
But you left school quite early, didn't you, at about 14?
Yes. Well,
was that during the Depression?
Yes. Before us, we all came out of school, and there were no jobs, and I didn't finish. I couldn't afford, and my cousins that I was living with couldn't afford to let me finish school, so I didn't pass my intermediate exam. And I went to work in a variety of jobs. First of all, in a newspaper, Sydney Sun.
Were you any good as a journalist?
No, I was terrible. I was a copy boy really at first, and then a cadet reporter. And I don't see how you can be any good as a journalist when you have to do the dreary jobs that a cadet has to do. I had to do wool sales. That's, just accounting how much the wool sales were, and shipping. They gave you all the dreariest jobs. And then eventually I did have an interesting job, and I was a sort of assistant to a man at Supreme Court. So I saw a lot of cases and things. And I was sacked for general inefficiency, and I was lazy. I didn't really like it.
Well, how did you get to be an actor from that kind of background?
Well, amongst many other jobs, when I lost the job on the newspaper, I did a variety of jobs. I worked on a cattle station and jumped the rattler, which is jumping trains. And there was a hobo, and chopped wood, and anything. There's so many jobs I can't remember. And in one period back in Sydney, I was at the Salvation Army Dosh House. I really was very at the bottom of the barrel. And there was an advertisement in one of the papers that said that a vaudeville company needed a straight man. And I'd done a little bit of sort of acting at school. And one of these characters suggested that I'd be a good straight man because he said, you've got a toffee voice, which meant the English accent. And I went down, and much to my surprise, I got this job, feeding the comedian. And also, one had to do everything in vaudeville. And I was also in the chorus. And I had learned a few steps, and I had to hoof. And I remember now the bitterness of it all. We're in the height of the Depression. The opening chorus of the vaudeville show, and we were all dressed in frayed pink dinner suits. And there were about 4 or 5 poor devils in the audience with their coat collars turned up. And the opening chorus was, we're in the money, come on, honey. And there was sadness. All the Depression songs are enormously sad. Every cloud has a silver lining. They were all symptomatic of the Depression. And I always remember these days singing these terribly sad, hopeful songs. And I drifted from vaudeville into radio. and gradually into the theatre, and then finally into the cinema.
Yes, because, I mean, as far as Britain was concerned, you were discovered by the Oliviers, weren't you, when you had your own company,
Yeah.
the Mercury Theatre?
Well, that was much later than this vaudeville period. I'd done radio, and most Sydney actors lived on radio. I mean, that was the bread. And then after the war, I formed a company, and we couldn't get premises. It's very difficult in Sydney to get a theatre. And we decided to do what the English had done during the war, which is to go around playing factories. And we built a Meccano set of a proscenium arch, and we carried our own switchboard, and 14 of us, and we had a truck. And we worked what was called, they were great days, we worked what was called Commonwealth. In other words, everybody got the same salary. And if there was any profits, we ploughed them back into the next show. And we did Molière and Schnitzler and things like that. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to play in some classics that I hadn't. And I was at a glass-blowing factory playing lunchtime Molière, and the Oliviers, who were touring with the old Vic, decided to come and see it. I remember I was so nervous that I was playing the Malade Imaginaire that the other actors swore that before the curtain went up, I took some of the phony pills that were in a bottle. And after the show, they came round and they were enormously impressed with the acting and the whole company. But I think mostly with our courage, and Larry said, you know, this is the real theatre, these are the street corner actors, and this is what really our business is about, is going out and playing things and building everything yourself. And he offered me a sort of chance in England, said, when you come to England, come and see me. And then my theatre, the Mercury, collapsed for want of finance. We couldn't get enough factories. And I came to England, didn't get a job with him immediately because he had a play in mind but didn't want to tell me in case I was disappointed. And I got my first job in England was at Ealing Studios in a film called Train of Events, Basil Deard.
Oh, yes.
And that is where I first met your father, who was working there in the great days of Ealing. Then after that, while I was making the film, Larry Olivier rang me up and said, I've got a play, I'd like you to audition for it. And it was Daphne L'Aureola by Bridie, with Edith Evans and Felix Elmer. Fantastic cast. It was the luckiest break any actor could have had. And fortunately for me, it was a great success.
Has there been a great element of luck in your career?
Yes. You know, actors say that it's 50% talent and 50% luck. And I think that I've had a very good percentage of luck. Number one, the Oliviers telling me to come to England when I did. I think I would have come anyway, but it was good timing. Then the play, Daphne L'Aureola, which I did, which is an enormous success. It could have been a flop, and that wouldn't have helped. And then in films, I think I've had lucky timing too. So luck has followed me, fortunately.
But you've never allowed yourself to be typecast in films, have you? Has this stopped you, do you think, from becoming a sort of John Wayne type superstar?
Yes, I think so. I think that the public, film-going public, really like their stars to take John Wayne or Jimmy Stewart or any of the great male stars of that era. And there was a predictability about their performances, and wonderful performances they were. But I think that they like to know who you are, what you are, and they're a little confused, perhaps, a vast public, if you choose to play a variety of parts.
Was there any attempt ever made to push you into certain types of roles?
Yes, I successfully avoided the naval hat. I never got in near the naval hat. Poor Johnny Mills did. You know, there was one period when Johnny Mills was a naval officer, movie after movie, and he finally escaped from that. I had a dangerous period when I started to play sort of Jungle Jim parts.
Oh yes.
After the Nun story, which was a big success for me. It was a very successful movie, and after that I played another doctor in the jungle, and a district administrator in the jungle, and another one in the jungle, and then suddenly I thought I've got to get away from this, otherwise I'll finish up forever in khaki shorts and running around the jungle. That, I think, was the first time that I got known in Hollywood and amongst the American companies. It wasn't a very successful film, but the one that really launched me with American companies was The Nun Story, which was a huge success and a wonderful picture too, I think, you know. And from then on, I've done a lot of American films, I think mostly because of The Nun Story.
Which of the films you have done do you remember with most pride?
I think Oscar Wilde, Bloody Sunday, and I expect The Nun Story.
What particularly about those films? Was it because they were successful films, obviously, but they had particular challenge for you inherent in them?
No, I think that because there was a challenge. I mean, for instance, when I played Oscar Wilde, everybody laughed and said I was the wrong shape and the wrong kind of actor, and it was a great challenge, and I think I succeeded. The Nun Story, because of working with Freddie Zinnemann, I think it was the first time that I'd worked with a director of his caliber, and also with Audrey Hepburn. And Bloody Sunday, again a difficult part and a challenge, and because of Schlesinger's really wonderful direction.
You've won 4 British Film Academy Awards over, what, from 1958 to 1971?
That's right.
That's quite a remarkable record.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that, actually.
Because nobody else has won 4.
No, I think 3, but I'm the only one with 4. I got it for Town Like Alice, Oscar Wilde, Bloody Sunday. Forgotten the other one.
No Love for Johnny.
No Love for Johnny. That's right.
Because you won it 2 years in a row,
That's
in
right,
fact,
yes,
with
yes.
Oscar Wilde and No
I
Love
was
for Johnny.
very thrilled last time when I got up for Bloody Sunday, and they said he's the only one who's won it 4 times. And I said, does anybody want to play poker? I think I got a good hand here.
There's one part you took which seemed an odd choice, and that was in Lost Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you do that?
Well, I think because perhaps I was playing in things that were a little esoteric. I looked back around about that period, and certainly The Pumpkin Eater and Bloody Sunday and films of which I'm enormously proud, taking those two as an example, are not the sort of films really that go in the vast. They're called art house pictures in America, and they're not. They don't go in the vast areas. And I felt, and I liked the yarn. I think that Lost Horizon is a wonderful yarn. Also wanted to make a musical. One always tries to stretch oneself somewhere else. And, you know, I thought this would reach a vast audience, which indeed it has. I mean, in the places like Idaho and Albuquerque and all those places, it's a very popular movie.
Peter, you had a reputation at one time for being a hellraiser. You and Trevor Howard and Errol Flynn. I'm sure you must have talked about this many times. But was it, in fact, a deserved reputation?
I don't think so, except if you know, unless hell-raising means that you like a few jars. We got drunk and cut up a dark alley now and again. I worked with Errol. In fact, the Hellraisers Club, which is supposed to be, we were never, in fact, the 3 of us together at the one time. I did make a picture with Errol.
That must have been an interesting experience.
It was. It was one of his last pictures, and it was called The Dark Avenger, supposedly about Richard Coeur de Lion. And Errol played Richard Coeur de Lion. I was the villain in it. And I remember with great joy and happiness an episode in that when Errol was asked to work on a Sunday. And he said, I never work on a Sunday because I'm a religious man. And he turned up, but they said, you got to, because we were behind schedule. So he arrived, stoned out of his head. And he was in armor and rode into the MGM courtyard, and I was up on the battlements, and he was supposed to challenge me to a joust. We'd had a lot of trouble on this picture with the visors, because when you were riding, if the visors were too tight and you came to a stop in front of the camera, you had to push them up, You couldn't get them up. And if they were too loose, they wobbled about as you were riding, so the props were always fixing the nut at the side of the visor. And they must have been fiddling with Errol's anyway. So he rode into the courtyard, stared up at me, completely out of his head. And the director said, "All right, Errol, start the jokes." Nothing happened at all. And so after 3 or 4 requests for him to start the scene, his completely blank face was staring up at us, incapable of any kind of speech. And very slowly, the visor came down over his face. And a voice inside the helmet said, "Well, good night all." And he fell off the horse and was carried back to the Dorchester in full armour because he's a big man. They couldn't get him out of it. And he was smuggled in through the servants' entrance of the Dorchester. He was a very pleasant, wonderful man, and I'm very glad that I had that experience, you know.
Are wealth and fame and popular acclaim, are these important things to you, important rewards of acting?
No, I mean, the silliest word in the world is success, because what does it mean, and what are the degrees of it? I think the only reason that one wants to be well known and successful in this business is that it gives you choice. If you're a less successful actor, you have to take certain things to eat, bread, looking after your family and your dependents, etc. When you are a little bit more successful, it gives you an opportunity to choose, and that's really the only thing it means to me. Money, one gets a little bit more money, which is useful. Again, for the dependents, I've got so many dependents that I am on a treadmill. I have to keep working. But, you know, I've got 2 ex-wives and a few governments and a few children to pay. And, you know, that's nice, but that isn't really what one does it for. Nor does one do it for paparazzi to follow you down the street or that kind of fame. But it does give you the choice. I mean, I'm at a lucky stage now where, for instance, I've been offered an American special of any play of my choice, which is a wonderful thing to happen, you know, and I can choose the play. Whereas a few years ago, perhaps you might have been offered a play, but you couldn't choose it. And that's a nice position to be in.
You were saying just now that you've got 2 ex-wives to support, and you're just about, congratulations, to get married again.
Sounds foolish, doesn't it?
Yeah, well...
yes. Well, I mean, Alita and I have been together for quite a long time now, and we seem to get on, and I think that the piece of paper makes it a little bit more... I live a great gypsy existence, and as we've got a baby daughter, it just makes it a little tidier when one's going around and living in hotels and things.
Didn't Alita went recently to an Anglican minister in Rome, didn't she, to talk about getting married?
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, he was very pleasant, and didn't know any of our circumstances, and didn't know us, or that we lived together, or that we... And he sat us down, and he gave us a traditional talk about marriage, and hoped that we were serious about it, and the purpose of it would be to have children. And it was a little ironical, seeing that our 2 children were downstairs waiting. I didn't have the courage to take them upstairs. And I sat straight-faced through this lecture and said, "Thank you very much." And then he said, "Have either of you been divorced?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, we can't do that sort of thing. You better try the Methodists." It's a difficult life because it's a gypsy life. I mean, for instance, in the last 2 years, I haven't stopped traveling, ever. And I believe that you have to take your family with you everywhere, like a circus family. If you don't, I think there is the danger of just simply growing apart. And with an actor and an actress married, one working in the theatre at night and the other one working in the film in the daytime, you never see each other. Those kind of stresses must be dangerous. Also, perhaps when one's younger, you know one is playing with the beautiful people. Perhaps the dangers of becoming enamored on a film with somebody you're working with are also greater than in normal life.
I hope you surmounted those dangers.
Well, I'm not answering that one, really. Some of the dangers. Yeah.
How do you see the future for yourself?
Well, I hope lots of work. I want to do this television, and I'd like to go back to the theatre. I'd love very much to play on Broadway, because I guess I'm a masochist. And all actors also are masochists in some curious way. They flirt with failure. And I'd like to play on Broadway because I've never done it. And also, you know, that you either are a great success and everybody's wonderful to you, or you sit in Sardi's and somebody comes in with the notices and you close the next night and nobody speaks to you. Because in America, failure is a disease. And if you're a failure, people will not touch you. They won't even walk on the same side of the street as you. And I'd like to chance my arm at either this wonderful feeling of success or get the hell out of town as quickly as possible.